Is he live, Gibby? Okay, okay. I think we're ready.
I think you'd be
He's not going to be here. Eric will not be here.
No, I'm not telling you.
What's up, Joe? How's Jody doing?
She's doing well. Recouping.
Is she like
I didn't
up
realize.
Oh, really?
I'd like to call to order the July meeting of the Highlands Town Board of Commissioners. I want to welcome everybody here tonight. It kind of feels like we're back home with this newly renovated, fully kitchened and totally handicapped accessible new community building. So appreciate all the work that went into that and the coordination that Josh and all of his staff did to make this possible in a timely manner. Our first item will be a moment of silence followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. Will you please join me in a moment of silence? Thank you. Now, if we will stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands. Justice for all.
May be seated. As always, our third item on the agenda is a statement of a conflict of interest. That is it working now? Okay. Item number 3, statement of conflict of interest. That is posted on the agenda sheet in your packet. If any commissioner has any conflict of interest, of course, they need to declare that if it impacts any decisions concerning town business. Our next item will be public comment. And let me just clarify one thing. We will have 2 opportunities for public comment tonight. The one I'm about to call will be a general comments period. And then when we have our public hearings concerning a rezoning request, there'll be another opportunity, a public comment period, where anyone who would like to specifically address the rezoning issue can come up and make a public comment. So with that said, I would open up now the floor to the public for comment. I appreciate you keeping your comments to around 3 minutes. But at this point in time, I will open up the floor for public comment. If anyone would like to make a public comment, we'd appreciate you coming to that microphone in the front and stating your name.
Across the country, everywhere we've been in recent weeks, that has been building that after the assassination attempt.
Hello.
Gene Chambers, you hear me?
Sure.
Okay. I'm gonna try to talk back.
Put to you,
Pull that
close.
towards you. Yeah.
Thank you for allowing me to speak tonight during the public comment. So you've already decided to send the idea of amortization of short-term rentals to the planning board, so I won't speak to that specifically since it's already in the works. What I want to convey tonight is the absurdity of it all. Mr. Miller already stated the last few weeks that your views on amortization have evolved over the last few years. It's too bad that most of your board hasn't seen the same light that you have. I've got to tell you, I was shocked with the comments spoken with such vitriol at the last meeting. It painted Highlands as a contender as the most unfriendly town in USA. Speaking of the last meeting, My husband and I attended, even though we had plenty to do after being off work for a week following the death and funeral of Tucker's mom. Several of you have made a point to give us your condolences, and we appreciate that more than you know. The part of the meeting relating to STRs and visitors to this town in general left us very upset. The next night, Tucker suffered a heart attack, and he's going to be fine. He's here, by the way. Our hospital and their association with Mission did everything right. I'm proud to have the medical services we have here. I'm not saying his condition had anything to do with the meeting, but it was just one more thing. I'm so grateful it wasn't one more nail in his coffin. You see, short-term rentals comprise about 1/2 of our business. We've been doing this a very long time and have no complaints from the town or neighbors about our renters. The only complaints we've had have been trash-related, and since we have bear-proof cans, that solved the problem. I did have a call from a concerned neighbor on Big Bear Pen on June the 9th about trash from one of our rental houses. We hurried up and finished what was to be our last Sunday brunch at Isabel's house and put on our gloves, grabbed trash bags. But by the time we got there, some other nice neighbor had collected the trash. We have 2 short-term rentals on Big Bear Pen. One was empty. The owner had been there last and had been gone for at least a week. And the other had the owner's family in residence. I'm not sure if it's the bear-proof cans latch didn't catch or what happened, but those owners have been reprimanded by us. And sorry, back to the half of our business part. If short-term rentals are completely annihilated, it would essentially close our business. I've already seen sales drop and rentals are down as they were last year. The anomaly of the 2022 record-breaking year was felt all over the country, not just Highlands, as was the slowdown of 2023 now in 24. There's got to be a better way for the town of Highlands to handle the problem of having guests in our town. I've heard all kinds of complaints from people saying the infrastructure in our town can't handle the number of visitors that are coming into town. Whose problem is that exactly? Mr. Mayor, you mentioned water guns as sort of a joke based on what some townspeople were doing in Spain as a way of discouraging tourists, and I believe you said we wouldn't be resorting to much to that. When COVID hit and everyone was flocking to Highlands, well, after the police blocks were removed, I wondered, what if the owner, not a renter, but the owner of every existing home in Highlands came here at the same time? You know what? We probably couldn't make it work. Should we put a moratorium on new home builds like the condominium moratoriums in the 1970s? I don't pretend to have the answers. I'm just asking you, each of you, to take into account everything that's on the table. HOAs should be in the place in neighborhoods, and people should only move to neighborhoods with existing HOA rules if they want to live in those types of places. But don't penalize the people who bought homes in neighborhoods with expired HOA regulations. I wonder how long our long-standing restaurants and shops could make it with just the year-round population and the others who own homes here but can only come a few weeks or months of the year. One more thing, and then I'll stop. One of the owners of a property we represent got a cease and desist letter from the town. The wording was something like, a complaint was made or advertising showed, etc. That particular home has rental records and tax records showing that it was an existing rental in 2022. I don't know who, where, or how the information came from, but they were wrong to send the letter. I don't know if they sent apologies or what, but they were wrong. If it's one thing I've been reminded of this year is life is too short to be so angry. Thank you.
Thank you. We have anyone else who'd like to make a comment? Okay. Mike, we're having a microphone problem. Please pull that up and talk into the mic. Real close.
I don't know. Is that better?
Mhm.
All right, great. First, I wanted to comment about the article that was critical of this commission in the paper. I thought it was uncalled for and unduly harsh for a group of people that does their very best to do what's best for the town. It was also motivated by profit, as the previous speaker, it's all motivated by, oh, the town couldn't survive. And I've had a place here for 23 years. And I remember when we were surviving with a much smaller activity and cute little shops, and everything was, I thought, very well. And I didn't see the turnover of the shops that seem to turn over more frequently now than they used to. But in any event, this is a lovely place. I appreciate what you do to keep it that way. The second thing I wanted to talk about is the lot cleared at 4.5 Street and Chestnut. We got to have a tree ordinance somewhere on residential property. They clear cut that lot. Some of the best, some of the stumps are huge, and there ought to be some way. I know you have a tree ordinance for commercial property, but you don't seem to have one for residential. If that could be done, that'd be great. The last thing is, I think you can identify with this. When cars especially sports cars, come up the Highlands Road from Franklin, they are coming up in a rather aggressive way, which is fine till they get to our town. And then I think they should be able to slow down the noise that comes across those lakes when those cars come and they're trying to downshift and make those curves. I can hear it on Hickory Hill Road. I mean, I'm pretty good distance from but when it's coming across the lake, I can imagine what some of you would be closer to the road might hear it pretty strongly as well. So we ought to have at least some sort of control over speed. And I wish we could adopt some kind of regulation for decibels, but no, maybe not. But anyway, thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Mike. Any other public comment?
Yeah, I mean, I think this point about. Say thank you
Would
to
you,
those.
would you
of
pull the microphone closer?
Call.
Thank you for those of you who chose to bring up short-term rentals to present it to the planning board. You spoke well. You spoke the feelings of many people who are local in this area. And for that, we definitely appreciate you. We know it's a hard subject. You've heard it time and again. There is no easy answer. I'm not asking for that, but I am asking for equitable representation. And I'm not getting that right now with the fact my neighbor can have a short-term rental. I cannot. My neighbor can sell his as a short-term rental. I cannot. That makes me almost an inferior citizen. The argument could be, well, you don't like short-term rentals. Why are you fighting for them? I'm not. What I'm saying is put everybody on equal footing. And when you say that, well, you haven't called the police, I hear that an awfully lot. We don't have any complaints, so we haven't police complaints. And what I want to say about that is you don't go to the doctor or call the doctor every time you are sick. And our communities have a type of illness that's being dramatic, yes, but they're changing. I don't know how to fix it, but I appreciate that you were willing to look at the subject again and to have the planning board look at it. And I support you for that, and thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any other public comment? Hearing none, let's move now to the next item on the agenda, and that would be to review and approve the proposed agenda. Do I have any changes or additions to the agenda?
Motion to approve is presented. Second.
We weren't going to do the
mutual aid,
mutual aid.
we found out we didn't have to do that.
So it goes back to the one we've already done.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. Any other changes? Hearing none, all in favor, please signify by raising your hand, saying aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Okay. The next item will be to approve the June 20th regular meeting minutes. Do we have any changes, clarifications, or corrections?
I make a motion to approve. Second.
Second. All in favor, please raise your hand, signify by saying aye. Thank you very much. The next item will be the report. And let me go ahead and start with mine. And after the town manager's report, I think I would like to kind of defer and call on our town attorney concerning the idea of a residential tree ordinance and what the state says and so forth. I attended the Transportation Advisory Committee Macon County meeting on road priorities. Now, week before last, and I've reported in my writing in the newspaper, we have no real new roads that will be occurring on the plateau in the near term or well into this decade or beyond. I know that there'll be some improvements like the Middle Creek Bridge at Scaly is about to be completed. The C. Tom Bryson Bridge on 64 that leads into the Highlands, that will be eventually replaced. But we don't really have any widening plans or additional roads in the future. So in many ways, our road capacity is pretty much where it is and where it will be going into the coming years. I know someone, after reading my articles, came up with the idea that we could do a bypass over near the fire department, cut through the property of the recreation department and come out on 64 on the north. I informed that person that DOT floated that idea in the 1990s, and it was not well received, and I don't think it would be well received at this time, but that's not even on the table. The other thing, we are moving toward a drought situation. Might say that Western Carolina is already in a mild drought, headed for more severe drought if we don't get rain. That is something that concerns the town because we are dependent on rain and surface water to make our water. So, of course, our staff will monitor that. Wanted to, again, express appreciation to our legislative delegation for the newly passed and the governor signed bill that imposes more severe fines for any tractor trailer over 30 feet that attempts to negotiate the Gorge Road. One thing that we've discovered, not only is there that basic fine, but if they're overweight, and most of them are about 80,000 pounds, and you are only supposed to have 20,000 pounds on that road, there are additional fines for being overweight. And I think that's especially important on the Gorge Road because as we saw last year with part of it falling apart, we can't afford to have continuous heavy loads stressing certain critical areas on that road. And then the other bill that people in town are very concerned about, that is the pharmacy bill, House Bill 246. The legislature is still in session. I've talked with Senator Corbin. That might be a challenge to get it passed, and here's why. While in the rural areas where we need that pharmacy access at the local level, and the bill would guarantee that they get reimbursements that would keep them in business, these pharmacies, the larger metropolitan areas don't share that concern, and some of the lobbyists are telling the senators from those areas that if you pass this bill, it will guarantee that prices will go up for all of their residents. And Senator Corbin says he doesn't know whether it'll pass or not, but that is the big argument that will be facing the legislature when it does come up for consideration. The other thing I wanted to go over was we had our power outage this Saturday. And I know that it was a surprise to all of us, and it was a long outage. And I'm asking, and I talked with Josh today, and I'd like for us to look at maybe talking with the company that's already working with the short-term rental software. They offer an array of systems and software for governments. And I would like for us to explore the possibility of being able to put a messaging system out for our customers or some way of being able to let people know what the problem is once we discover it and keep them relatively posted on when the power will be restored, what is the situation at any one given time. That seemed to be a problem for us, especially on a weekend. And to be quite frank, I have asked Mayor Pat that I personally pay for. I was able to fire out to about 1,500 people immediately and kept sending out messages about it. I'd like to see our town have that capability too. So I'm going to be asking our staff to explore that possibility. I think it'd be well worth it to be able to keep people, in the loop when we experience these long power outages. And then finally, let me ask Bob Hagerman, I know this take a little bit of time, but had a conversation with Bob and Josh today. A lot of people have been asking, why do we not have a residential tree ordinance? Why, when we do have a commercial tree ordinance? I know we got special legislation to institute the commercial tree ordinance several decades ago. And then we were able to follow through with enforcing that ordinance. It was my understanding, and I think it's still possibly the same. If you go to a residential tree ordinance, you have to address the issue of the legislature and what they will permit and what they will not permit. My conversation with Bob today revealed it's kind of an ambiguous situation right now in the legislature. So I'm going to ask Bob to just do a summary of where he thinks we are if we wanted to pursue such a ordinance, because there are other towns that are also wanting to institute a residential tree ordinance. So Bob, would you give us an overview?
Sure thing, Mayor. So it's a really interesting subject that is the subject of debate. I had occasion to look at some bills introduced last year in 2023. And there are a number of local bills where communities ask for specific authority to regulate trees. They do not all read the same. But interestingly, there were two statewide bills introduced. Neither one of them, to my understanding, has moved anywhere after being introduced. But one bill, it would expressly authorize municipalities and counties to adopt tree ordinances. Implicit in that to me is that whoever introduced the bill must think or be concerned that there currently isn't authority statewide generally to do so. A second bill was introduced that would expressly prohibit local ordinances regulating trees. I would assume that the sponsor of that bill believed that there is authority and introduced the bill to take it away. So to me, that suggests that's an example of some lack of clarity on what exactly is the state of the law, general law for local governments to regulate trees. Now, Mayor, as you mentioned, Section 5.3 of the Highlands Town Charter, which is an act of the General Assembly, it specifically grants authority. And I'm going to read it. It's one sentence. The town may adopt ordinances to regulate the removal of trees from public and commercially zoned private property within the town in order to preserve, protect, and enhance one of the most valuable natural resources of the community and to protect the health, safety, and welfare of its citizens. I mentioned before that in 2023, I believe there were 3 local bills introduced. Over the last 20, 30, I don't know how many years, I do know numerous communities, local governments have sought and obtained specific authority through local acts to deal with trees. Given the ambiguity on the status of the law regarding general grants of authority, since Highlands has a specific grant that is limited to removal of trees from public and commercially zoned private property, I would not advise you to move into the area of regulating the removal of trees on residential property without getting specific authority to do so from the General Assembly. In other words, I think there's a strong argument, since the General Assembly spoke to Highlands authority specifically through Section 5.3, and since it's limited to removal of trees from public and commercially zoned private property, I think it would be a pretty significant legal risk to extend that ordinance to residentially zoned property without getting clear authorization from the General Assembly. That's the best interpretation and legal advice I can give you right now. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Okay. Does anyone have questions of Bob? I appreciate you giving us this overview, because, you know, in my opinion, if we were to pursue this, this is not something that you do quickly. It has to be deliberate and in coordination with what the legislature would authorize. Okay. Hearing no questions, I'll just stop my report and turn it over to any commissioners' updates or reports.
I've got a couple of things. So last week, Commissioner Weller and I attended the county board meeting, And we left with a 5-0 vote in support of giving the town $350,000 for the playground. So that was an exciting night, and it was a long night, but it was an exciting night. And then we also have had some success lately. We just found out yesterday that we received a $22,000 grant from Mountain Findings for the playground and a $35,000 grant from the visitor center for the playground. So right now we're looking at we're just over $800,000 in funds raised. So the goal is we got to raise about another $300,000 in private funds. And then there's that $500,000 grant that's kind of hanging out there that we'll find out
Okay.
about sometime in August. So that's kind of where that stands. We also have coming up August 17th is the Twilight 5K, which the playground will be the benefactor of that road race. So participate in that if you can. And then I also want to say that this past Tuesday, Rebecca and I met with Mike Bryson and Jim Bryson about the golf tournament, which is going to be held on September 16th at Colisaga Club. And it's exciting to have the backing and support of the Bryson family for that. So it's going to be a great event. And again, the proceeds for that will benefit the scholarship fund.
Okay. Well, thank y'all for your work with the county in securing those funds, both Commissioner Weller and Commissioner Steeler. Thank you so much. All right. The next report would be the town manager, Josh Ward.
Well, as the mayor said, it's good to be back here in the community building. The only thing that's left to finish up, there's a few pieces of equipment for the kitchen that's supposed to come in. I think they're going to deliver some tomorrow and hopefully the remainder next week. And then that'll be put in hopefully next week, and they'll finish up. And then there's also the platform that's up on the roof for the safety railing for the roof fence. That's also being constructed right now. And hopefully within the next 2 weeks, it'll be completed. So also the Dog Mountain water line replacement project, the final design and the bid packet has been submitted. I think it was 3 or 4 weeks ago. We're looking at probably 2 or 3 more months before we hear back from the state on that. As soon as we hear back, our engineer can put out the bid documents, and hopefully by December, January, we'll start construction on the Dog Mountain project.
Okay.
That's all I have.
Okay. Thank you, Josh. Next item would be the consent agenda. Do we have any questions concerning the consent agenda that's in your packet?
Motion to approve is presented.
Second.
All in favor, please indicate by raising your hand, signifying by saying aye. Thank you.
Aye.
All right, the next item will be the public hearing, Pine Holdings LLC rezoning request, Michael Mathis. Before we start, do I have a motion to open the public hearing?
Make that motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Now, staff comments, Michael Mathis.
Thank you, Mayor. So nothing's changed really on the memo from last month, but I'll just go back over it. On April 16th, 2024, Pine Holdings LLC submitted a rezoning petition to the Town of Highlands Planning Department. The subject property at 424 Pine Street is 0.977 acres and Zone B2 conditional zoning. The B2 CZ ordinance and map amendments were approved by the Town of Highlands Board of Commissioners on April 21st, 2022. Pine Holdings LLC is requesting a rezoning from B2 CZ to B2 General Use District. Included in your agenda packet is the Alta survey completed on December 3rd of 2020, and the Planning Board reviewed this request on May 28th, 24, and they recommended approving the rezoning request. Also here tonight is Doton, one of the owners of the property, and then I believe their legal counsel, Mr. Justice, is with us over Zoom.
Okay.
Hello, everyone. My name is Doton Zuckerman. I'm the property owner at 424 Pine Street. We were here a couple of years ago and we were approved for a rezoning from B3 to B2 tied to a specific plan. But since that approval, the The world has changed a lot. The interest rates have tripled and construction costs have doubled. And being tied to a specific plan really backfired on us and made it impossible to execute on. So I'm back here today to hopefully keep the B2 zoning, but be released from that specific plan, which will allow us to the flexibility to execute on a project there.
Okay, thank you. All right, our next item would be to open it up to public comment. So at this time, I will open the floor up to anyone who would like to come and make a public comment concerning this zoning request. Hearing no public comment, I will now move for a motion to close the public hearing.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, all in favor, please raise your hand, signify by saying aye. Okay, next item would be council action. I'll open the floor to the board members.
I just want a point of clarification. The owners just asked if he could be released from the B1 CZ. Doesn't it, if he does not want it, doesn't it just go back to B3? And so we're actually changing from B3 to B2.
It actually does not. So the way our ordinance says in the last paragraph of that regulates conditional zoning is the planning board. It calls for the planning board to review properties that have been rezoned to that rezoning or to that zoning district and then go back and rezone them if they would like to.
Okay, so it doesn't necessarily revert back to the.
No,
previous.
so that property is still B2CZ and they could still develop under that site-specific
But
plan.
it's so site-specific that it just doesn't work.
Yeah, that's what he's
Well,
saying.
and I guess what my question was, is that the way it should be done? Or if he says this isn't going to work, automatically goes back to B3 and he can do whatever he needs to in B3. He has to come get another zone.
He would have to get rezoned to B3. Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Any other questions?
Mr. Mayor, I have a question for Ms. Soda. What is the plan currently?
Doton, come on.
Honestly, we're going down the road to try to build a boutique hotel, but the flexibility is really what we're looking for. There's too many, the world is a crazy place right now. Things are changing so quickly and we just cannot be tied to a specific plan. It makes it very difficult to find partners and capital. So we'd like to have the flexibility with B2, but at the moment, we're going down the road to build a boutique hotel.
That's what I had heard, scuttlebutt. And I understand is the plan for commercial down and residential up, or hotel up?
We'd like to figure out a way to put a restaurant with the hotel, but it's a bit early to say. So
The conditional zoning plan had a buffer setback, vegetative buffer setback. Am I not right, Michael?
Probably answer more on it, but
And
What was it?
I have no current ties to this project, by the way, because I was the one that presented it to you 2 years ago. So, and like I said, if I had all my past clients, I couldn't speak about it at these meetings. I might as well not be here, but there was not. It was the reason to change from B3 to B2 conditional was to pull the buildings to the street, make it pedestrian friendly and park behind. The only place there was a vegetative buffer that was shown was against the bank next door. It was a request, but we needed to have set 30% green space anyway.
Well, okay, the green space, but the idea would be you could put the storefront right on the sidewalk as if it was B1, as
Correct.
long as you met the parking requirements. of
Correct.
B2.
That's the difference between B1 and B3 is the park, well, B2 is the parking requirement. So
Right.
going from B3 to B2 conditional or B3 to B2, or in this case, B2 conditional, B2 does not relinquish you from the parking requirement in any way. You still have the full parking
just the
requirement. It's just
setback.
it's
So
really the
it's-
setback.
So the streetscape is actually building instead of parking.
Yeah. And if you decided to do commercial on the main level and apartments or condos upstairs, B2 to B3 doesn't make a difference on how many you can have. The square foot per, of property per unit is the same for B2 and B3, so.
It's
um,
only setback, both.
It's really just setback and, you know, it's, the plan before was retail. Yeah.
Mr. Mayor?
Property.
Say that again,
I
Mike?
believe B3 allows more uses than B2 does. Yeah.
Mr. Justice, would you like to weigh in?
I would, Mr. Mayor. I appreciate the question about specific plans. Your town attorney probably would have said this is a general use district request, which means the menu of allowed uses are available to my client, not one specific use. I will say to Amy's point that it used to be B3. We're asking for B2 general. If you look at your comprehensive plan, which I know you have, this is really a district that is meant for this piece of property, and really B2 is probably a district you will want to use more often because it's promoting pedestrian activity in addition to the automobile. B3 is pretty much your automobile district where there are a lot more uses allowed, to Michael's point, service stations, for example. And so this is sort of a middle transition zone.
Campgrounds breaking down.
Property to encourage both pedestrian and some vehicular use. That's right. Microbreweries are allowed in B3, allowed on this piece of property. 3 has to go through a special use permit process. B2 is appropriate based on your comprehensive plan.
Okay. And we do have, over at Second Street, we do have some B2 zoning already that segues into B1. And this would be a similar pattern.
Well, listen, to me anyway, it's a better streetscape look than it is a parking lot.
Yeah.
You know, honestly, so to me, B3 is one of those wide open things, and as Craig says, it's an automobile, you gotta use it to get there. This is a block off Main Street.
Right.
This is the kind of the perfect place for this type of thing to go, if you're
And-
gonna expand business at all out of the, without going way out of the central business district in the central business.
Right.
district.
And along those lines, the comprehensive plan called, especially that corridor, going from there all the way down to the old funeral home, as an area that was right for a change to B2, because of that aspect and people wanting to walk there. Because once you hit one of those that the building's set way back, it kind of feels like I'm not supposed to go this way anymore. So it extends our downtown, without increasing, because of parking, without increasing the burden on
Right.
the town parking. So.
Well, I'll make a motion that we approve the Pine Holdings zoning request from B2 CZ to B2 general.
And Brian, could you just mention that it is consistent, or it is reasonable and consistent with the comprehensive
Yeah,
plan?
it is reasonable and consistent with the comprehensive plan.
Okay.
And the map.
And
Ordinance and the map.
The ordinance and the map.
Okay. Do I have a second? Got a second.
Mayor, if I could, before you vote, I do want to state for the record, and Mr. Justice hinted at this. You heard a little bit of discussion of what the applicant is thinking about doing with the property, but because this is a general use district, your decision must contemplate the appropriateness of all the allowable uses in the general district. And I just wanted to put that on the record before you cast your votes.
Thank you, Bob. Appreciate it. Any further comments?
Mr. Mayor, I do have one other question for Michael. The First Bank and the old laundry building across Pine Street are what zoning?
B1 and
Give
B3.
me one second.
First Bank is actually B3, but the old laundry is B1.
What is the old?
Talking about the real estate
I'm
offices.
sure.
Where, you mean Ashley Harley's?
Ashley Harley and.
Yeah,
That's big.
Okay. Okay.
But you had sent that out as part of our.
The zoning map
part of
is
our
there.
Zoning map,
About 157.
yeah. It's way back here.
There it is.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm going with them, I'm to be honest.
That's
If it
fine.
don't
Just
have an
let's-
address on it, I don't know the pastors.
Oh, yeah.
Where they located.
Yep, yep. Yep. It used to be the old laundry, it's CK Swan.
Yeah, okay, yes, yes.
It used to be a laundry a very, very long time ago.
I just want to make sure we weren't spot zoning.
No, it is B1.
Actually, what it does is it takes it from B1.
Transition.
It used to go one street over, it's
Right,
across the street was B3, so B2 is a nice transition.
right.
And while we're here and we pull this map up, it appears that part of the park that was added on is zone B2. We're going to go back and research that. When that property was transferred to the town, I don't know if it was rezoned as government institutional. If not, we'll need to go back and do that just to make it consistent. Okay? We have a motion on the floor. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, please raise your hand, signify by saying aye. Thank you. The
Thank you,
motion
Mr. Mayor.
carries. Good to see you, Mr. Justice.
Thank you, Mayor. It's good to see everybody from Arkansas.
Okay. Thank you.
Arkansas.
Arkansas.
Yes, sir.
Good.
Have a great evening.
Okay. All right, our next item is Tom Neal, our Chief Executive Officer and Nursing Officer for the Highlands Cashiers Hospital. I have conversations with Tom all the time about what's going on at the hospital, and we both thought it would be a good night for him to come and give us an update on what is happening at the hospital. Tom?
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, council. Is this on? Yep.
Yeah, just pull it close to your mouth. Yeah.
Oh, there we go. Need to see what I got here. So I got to get my
And
signal.
just bring
straight
that
with Gibby.
microphone close. Oh, there you
Okay,
go.
how's that?
Great.
All right, do you want to go to the first slide, Gibby? So what I wanted to do tonight was to just brief the town and the community with what we're doing at the hospital. I call this investment in healthcare. And I will just share, our number one investment, our most valuable resource is our people. And we've done a lot to invest in people. When I first came here, and you've heard the story from me, I'm sure, it was right before COVID. And a lot of the plans I had for Highlands Cashiers Hospital got shifted during that period. It was a very challenging time for healthcare. For the people in healthcare specifically, we called it the Great Resignation. Lots of people said, I love taking care of people, but I am tired of wearing masks. I'm tired of worrying about death and dying. And I'm tired of worrying about taking this home. I'm in an age I can retire and I'm going to. So they did. So we have been focused on what do you do to bring people into the healthcare? And there's several things up here I want to talk to. The first thing, and I've talked to you all before, I believe, is about our Grow Your Own CNA program. And this is a program where we take somebody literally with no experience. We bring them into the healthcare. We train them to be a certified nursing assistant. Many of them go on to other professions, advancement. We just brought 9 new students in through our program. They were all graduates of Highlands. Well, most of them are graduates of Highlands High School. 6 of the 9 were graduates. 2 of them are already planning to go on to be an RN, or registered nurse. We also just had our first 2 that graduated from this program that went on to our Galen School of Nursing. So this is a great program. We've had close to 60 students that have graduated from this program since we started a few years ago. And I think it's one of the best examples I can get as far as how we are investing in healthcare in the future. The next one is our nursing school partnerships. Again, as we went through COVID and we started to recognize, the significant need for healthcare workers, one of the things we did, and I'm speaking more broadly as Mission Health or HCA, we started reaching out to our nursing school partners and saying, we've got a real deficit. What do we need to do? How can we work together to bring more nurses into your programs? And the answer was quite simple. It's money. What we need is more faculty. And while the state will reimburse us once we get a program going, they won't reimburse us to get it off the ground. So we did partner with many of the nursing schools. We brought their ability to take more students into their classes up. And most recently, we partnered with Southwestern Community College to restart their practical nurse program, or what you would call an LPN, licensed practical nurse. And I'm very proud that Highlands Cashers Hospital is partnering very closely with them. One of their needs for that was to again to find clinical faculty. And what we agreed to do was that we would use our staff in a program we're calling a clinical instructor partnership, where they would actually serve as the faculty for the students. So we will have 4 LPN students that will be rotating through Highlands Cashers Hospital and Eckerd Living Center, where they will learn to become a graduate, a licensed practical nurse. So I think that's just a great way to, again, bring people into healthcare to improve that accessibility to schools. Galen College of Nursing, this is a new college that HCA started in the Asheville market. And again, it was identified to address the shortage of RNs specifically in our market. It is going into, I believe it's 3rd cohort now, and something that is very successful, but also again is increasing the ability to bring new nurses into the schools. MAHEC, we are the largest partner with MAHEC. So MAHEC is the Mountain Area Health Education Consortium, and is where residents, physician residents come in to learn to be a doctor. Many of them come from across the country. They learn right here in Western North Carolina how to practice whatever field they're going into. And the great thing about that is once they get here, many of them like it, they stay here. In fact, if you remember, we started a new psych hospital in Asheville called Sweeten Creek. We were very excited that all of the psych residents that graduated from a program last year decided to stay there to support that faculty. And our very own Dr. Patty Wheeler, she actually came to the MAHEC program when she came here 30 plus years ago. So it's a great opportunity for us to, again, to bring doctors here. We are planning to bring family medicine residents back to Highlands. So that would be a great opportunity. Maybe one of them will choose to stay here. I don't know, but I do think this is a great opportunity to teach a doctor how to do traditional community or rural family medicine. And the last thing, and I can't take a lot of credit for this, but it's the Boys and Girls Club partnership. And this is one of the things where we simply said, took a community partner, said, hey, we're looking to do something. And we said, hey, we'll be happy to help. And I will tell you that, when you start talking about bringing a bunch of, school kids into a building where we have geriatrics that are doing cardiac rehab and physical therapy, my risk department was not too wild about this at first. So we started talking about how can we assure this is a safe place for both the students as well as for our geriatric or the people that go into the therapy department. And we found a really good solution. So I'm excited. This will be opening up in the fall. And again, our main, partnership in that is just providing the space, and I appreciate what the town's done to bring that. Because I will tell you that as much as it benefits everybody, it also benefits the hospital employees, and they're very excited to see it there. So, Gibby, next slide. So I call this a sneak peek, and I think one of the last times I was here, we were talking about workforce housing, and this continues to be a problem. We have spent a lot of time over the last year and a half talking about what we can do. So one of the first things we did was we did form a nonprofit that would be separately looking at this, that's independent of the hospital. That partnership or that nonprofit has formed a partnership with a developing partner called Ray Venture Group. Ray Venture Group did the studies. They looked at this and said, yeah, this is a need. This is something that very much would help the community, that would be profitable. What you see there is the designs. It's right off the hospital. If you look into the top right corner, that would actually be our ER and the helipad. And you're looking down that access road goes to Buck Creek Road. This is what you're looking at here will be a 60 to 80 bed unit, or have 60 to 80 units. And what we're really talking about is how can we, assure there's access to healthcare. I want to emphasize this is not for hospital workers. It is for any healthcare worker, first responders, EMS, law enforcement, school nurses, our private practices in the community. I do acknowledge we would probably be the largest user. We are the largest, employer of healthcare workers here. In fact, a third of our employees come off the mountain every day to come up here to deliver care to this community. So this is in the early stages, which is why I'm calling it a sneak peek. We are currently in the stages of trying to figure out where we're going to get the funding for it through multiple sources. So we're looking at potentially private donors. We are looking at probably loans to do this, and very excited about the project. One of the things that when we looked at it that really excited me was as we got into it, my big desire was I do not want to see anything that would not reflect the culture at Highlands Cashers Hospital. So you're really seeing some very nice establishments. They're developed well. They're eco-friendly. In fact, they use geothermal heating and cooling because one of the cost of housing is not just the rent, it's how much the cost to heat the unit. So this would be very affordable for them. And it's got a community with it. It does include daycare center. I want to be clear, we're not going to operate the daycare. We would lease that out to another partner that would take that on, community buildings, et cetera. So it's a sneak peek, and I just wanted to share it. So if I come back later saying, hey, we're looking for support for this, you would not be hearing it for the first time. But again, I would say that this would be very important to our success in the future. You know, I will tell you, we talk to people all the time as we're doing interviews. They often leave and they're very excited about our hospital, about our nursing home. Then they start looking at housing and they call us back and say, you know, I just can't afford to live there. So it's a real problem, and I think everybody recognizes that. So service, I'm very proud of the hospital. I think that comes across pretty loudly. But we really do focus on culture. We focus on what we call patient experience. But there's a few things here I want to talk about. And the first one is our ER. And I think most people in this room, if you've used our ER, you really know how great it is. And I will tell you that it is a reflection of the people. We do have great people. And we've challenged them to make it one of the best in the country. And I will tell you, they've met that challenge. We were recognized at the end of last year as being the #1 ER in all of HCA. So that's about 190 hospitals, just to give you an idea. And we've held that mark. We've actually gotten better. We can, at this point, are sitting at about 8 quarters where we rank #1 in our company for patient experience. So that is something I'm very proud of. We also are currently recognized in top 10 for both our inpatients, so patients admitted to the hospital, as well as outpatient. That would be patients coming in for x-rays, laboratory work, therapy services. Another thing that's not on this slide I want to share, and I will talk about surgical services. We did restart our surgical services last year, and what we are now is #1 in HCA for surgical services last quarter, and we're in the top 5 right now for surgical services. So what I really want the town to hear is that if you come to Highlands Cashers Hospital, you're going to be treated really well, just like family. Next slide. Another thing when you're looking at a hospital is quality. And we celebrated early this year a really tall accomplishment. When I first became a nurse, I had somebody tell me, he said, it's really easy to be a nurse. All you got to do is treat everybody like their family and don't give people something in the hospital that they didn't come there with, like hospital-acquired infections or hospital-acquired complications. We recognize 10 years with 2 of the most common hospital-acquired, or 10 years without one of the most common hospital-acquired infections, what we call CAUTIs and CLABSIs in our industry. It stands for catheter-associated urinary tract infections or central line bloodstream infections. So 10 years, I will tell you that is unheard of. When we started sharing this with people in our industry, they were just amazed. They were asking what we do. But I will tell you, it just reflects a lot of pride. This is a celebration for it. And I won't tell everybody's story there, but I do want to tell the young girl in the middle. This is a patient that we see regularly in the hospital. She has a condition that requires frequent IV infusions. She has what we call a port or a central line. And when I was thinking about how do we share the importance of this, I reached out to Jordan. I said, would you mind participating? And she asked me what I wanted to say. And I said, I'd just like you to share why you trust us, why you come here. And she said, I'd be happy to. And she said, I want you to know something. She said, I had a bloodstream infection. I lost a port. This is the only place I can have a port. I watch the nurses and know what they're supposed to do, and they do a great job. So that's why I trust Highlands Cashers Hospital. So she shared her story. It was really touching, and it was meaningful, and I think it gave a lot of purpose to our staff that were in attendance. Other things, primary stroke accreditation. This was very important for us. We earned this last year. And the reasons it's important is, #1, it shows that we're doing the best practices in healthcare as it relates to somebody that comes in with a stroke. #2, what I will tell you, if you go through these journeys, you find out where you're not doing as well. And I like to say we're doing everything great, but there are obviously things we could do better, and we got better. One of the things you look at is how long does it take a patient when they come in the door to get the clot busters that would stop a stroke? And we were averaging about 60 minutes, which is actually really good. We're now averaging about 45 minutes by just following what they suggested. And the third really important reason is EMS has been designated by the state. If you got somebody with stroke symptoms, you're supposed to go to a stroke accredited center. So they would have to bypass us by law. So we are now a stroke accredited center. They can now bring patients there to Highlands Cashers Hospital. The last point is just our nursing home. I think most of you know this, but we have a great nursing home, 5-star rating that reflects best staffing, best quality outcomes, and best state inspections. There are very few, in fact, only 12% of nursing homes make this mark. There's only 3 in Western North Carolina that can make this claim as they're a 5-star nursing home. So it's a great place. If you ever spend any time there, you can feel it in the organization. It's just a really fun place and the residents get great care. New providers. I'll do half a screen at a time here, I think. So first, when I first came to this community, and this was actually in Cashiers, it was kind of ugly when I went to a community meeting about what's going on in the hospital. And what I heard was it's a doctor's desert. And in fact, in Cashiers, there were no doctors. We've worked very hard to bring doctors in. Dr. Kate Shattenkirk, Allie Litchfield, they're just now celebrating their 3rd year. They have had significant success with growth. We're now looking to add a 3rd provider into that clinic. The next one would be our Highlands Clinic. So you have the Blue Ridge Clinic. Again, we're just I guess the landlord for that agency. But we also, I do like to remind people, when the hospital was sold, the funds from that sale did subsidize the foundation, and Blue Ridge is subsidized by the Highlands Cashiers House Foundation. So, but it's a great clinic. They did add Julie Arnold earlier this year. I think that's everything on that slide. So that's where we are with primary care. And I think I have one more, didn't I, Gibby? There we go, surgeons. So I also wanted to talk about surgical services. So when I first came to interview at Highlands Cashiers Hospital, I remember getting toured through the operating rooms. I thought, wow, this is a great facility. And I said, how many surgeries you do? The answer was none. So when I left the interview, I was asked, and they said, hey, we'd like to have you here. What do you think? And I said, well, what do you think about me restarting surgical services? They said, well, that's what we're looking for somebody to do. A little thing called COVID happened, so that did delay plans, but we did restart surgical services. This year, we've had a lot of success with orthopedics. We did our first total hip, total knee, total shoulder. They've had great outcomes. We actually have a unique opportunity because of our swing bed program, which is actually where you could take a hospital room and say, well, today we're going to do rehab services. So it's essentially an inpatient rehab hospital. So our first patient, Louise Royal, and she's allowed me to share her story. 89, very young lady. She wanted to get back to clogging and square dancing and stuff like that. So she came in, she got her knee replaced. She spent a week or 2 in our rehab program, and she's now out and about, and she's doing just great. So this has been a great program. We are recruiting for a physician assistant that would support that. And we are looking to recruit our own surgeon to support us. We are currently sharing with Angel. And what we found is that the 2 days a month that we were looking for orthopedics is just not enough. There is a lot more need here. So this is something we're definitely looking to grow. Other services we have are obviously our general surgeons that do both general surgery and endoscopy. One of those also has a fellowship training in hand surgery. That is Dr. Osborne. And we got a couple of new things that are coming about that I wanted to share. That is our plastic surgery. That is Dr. Chris Winslow you see in the middle there. He is a facial plastic reconstruction surgery. So he will be restarting plastic surgery at Highlands Cashiers Hospital. He had his first clinic last week, and he will do his first surgery next month, assuming he has a patient to do. So this would be things like brow lifts, facelifts, things like that. And those will be private pay. It is a good business opportunity for our hospital. If you're looking at sustainability, I will tell you that having a strong surgical program is very important. So he is here now. And then the last one would be a pain management doctor. You're seeing in the bottom, the first and second from the left. That is 2 of the doctors with comprehensive pain management. They will be coming up here to help patients that have pain issues. Often it's not drugs per se, but it's things like injections and things like that where people need blocks to help with pain or to help them and manage that. And I get a lot of calls about that. I will tell you that there are a lot of people that are looking for help with that. Today I'm sending them to Asheville or Waynesville. So this is a great service we're offering. Next slide. And the last thing is the community involvement. Nothing quite as glamorous as what we did with the COVID vaccine initiative. But last year we started looking at how we can be involved in the community. We had one of our community partners say, hey, we'd like to do something kid friendly. Had a staff member said, hey, we did some teddy bear clinics up in New Jersey. What do you think about that? I said, well, why not? That really went viral. It's been very popular. We gave out about 600 bears last year. We've had 3 events this year. We were most recently at the Bascom, where in 3 hours we had 150 kids that came in that adopted a bear, and we helped them treat their bear. And I'll tell you what's important about this, and it's always fun making kids happy, right? But these kids, you could see some of them, they may be future doctors or nurses or things like that. We're helping reduce anxiety. So it's a really neat thing. We are also doing health screenings at these events. So we're checking things like blood pressure and glucose, but we're out in the community. We will be at the Twilight 5K as a community, as a sponsor, passing out water. And we will, of course, be at Halloween on Main Street, and we'll be at the Christmas parade. So, but we're very involved in the community. I think I just have, well, this was something, that story, and I hope I'm not taking too much time, Mayor, but this was a neat story here. We did a food drive, and I will tell you, I'm very competitive. So when this came about, they said the winner of this will get a cash donation made to a charity in their community. There was one for our division, which would be Mission Health, and there's one for the whole company. So I told my team, I said, we're going to win. So what would you see here? We took off on our teddy bear theme. We built a teddy bear sculpture there, and we did win. We won both for our division and for the whole company. So all across the country, $35,000 we brought back to Highlands. Half of that went to the food pantry here. Half of that went to Fishes and Loaves over in Cashers. And it was a pretty neat story as I made those calls. And I'll tell you real quickly what I heard. Here at the food pantry, what they shared with me was, you know, this is very meaningful. This was right at the beginning of December. Because of inflation, the cost of food, what we normally do by buying like turkeys and hams that we would give out, we didn't have the funds to do it. We now do. That's pretty neat. Over in Fishes and Loaves, I knew their story because it was just in the paper. Their floor had collapsed in their building, and they were looking for funds to restore that. So when I gave them the call, they were also very thankful because they're like, we weren't sure we were going to get the first dollars to get this back. Now we know. So it was a neat thing that we did to help the community. Capital investment. I won't take a lot here. Just I think I've shared this many times, but $16 million in capital investment since we came to since HCA took over. For a hospital our size, I would tell you that's probably about 8 times what I would expect, maybe 7 times, but somewhere in that range. But a lot of things in the hospital, it's a beautiful hospital, were very old and worn. Infrastructure, air handlers, boilers, many things in the kitchen. We were just funded this year for another $300,000 to replace our ovens and stoves and things like that. Anything in a hospital is very expensive. This year, we're also going to be replacing our CAT scanner and our MRI scanner. So that is about a $3 million investment. So just a lot being put into the hospital. Our surgical services, I will tell you that cost a lot of money as well. We're talking about in excess of $500,000 to bring in all the equipment the doctors needed. So that's something I'm very excited about. And then taxes, this is one, and I'll put this in the context of, I hear a lot, and I don't want to get, controversial in the whole mission health thing, but I do hear a lot about for-profit, nonprofit, good, bad, whatever. I've worked in both, and I will tell you what, the mission is the same at both. We're here to take care of people. Our mission is to take care of everybody who comes in our door, provide the best care possible, provide it with compassion, and I think we do it well. There is one significant difference that I want to point out. We pay taxes. Nonprofits don't. To the tune of $1.9 million we paid in taxes to Macon County last year. And I will just challenge this group to think about, what if we didn't pay that $1.9 million in taxes? This is not like the federal government. You don't spend what you don't make. That would mean services were gone, or you would raise taxes. It's that simple. You do not do that in local governments. So it's just an important thing to remind. We do pay our taxes. I will tell you there's a lot of controversy that some nonprofits should. I'll tell you the hospital in Louisville was far more profitable than many of the for-profit hospitals I went to, and they never pay taxes. So it's not something I'm looking to get into politics, but I just want to point that out, that we do contribute in ways other than just delivering the health care. We support the local governments. I think that was everything I had. So I appreciate the time you have allotted.
Okay, thank you.
Tom.
Thank you. Any
That was
questions?
great.
I will say one thing, Tom. I hope that COVID vaccination clinic will just go down as a great moment in the history of Highlands, and it never comes back.
too.
And I know in the newspapers, they're talking about a surge. I hope we don't see COVID come roaring back. You want to make a brief
I'll
comment?
just say that, yeah, it's increasing. We're seeing it in the ER. But they're not nearly as sick as they were back in 2020, 21. They're almost always treated and released.
People can handle it better.
They can. I mean, you're very sick. I don't want to mislead anybody. I would encourage everybody to take the precautions, especially hand washing. That's the most important thing you can do. But it's not something you want to get. You know, it
Sure.
really will put you down, very high fevers. But you're not seeing people admitted and necessarily on ventilators and really at the critical state they were. But it is coming back.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Mhm. All right. That is the end of the agenda.
Got one more. Grease trap.
Oh, I'm sorry. You're exactly right. Fats and oil and grease tracks. Josh Ward, it's an update.
So, as you remember, we allocated some funds in the budget to do, grease trap inspection, something that we haven't done before. Lamar and I met last week with Scott with Environmental Inc., and Scott is doing all the inspections on the restaurants, for the grease traps. He said it went very well, very smooth. He's inspected 21 of 52 that we had on the list. And that also includes the country clubs and the churches and things like that. So he said he calls them ahead of time, picks out a good time to go in that don't disrupt operations. He said that the grease traps that he's inspected in these 21 locations have been cleaned. And he's been really satisfied with that. A couple of those facilities didn't have grease traps. They didn't realize they needed them. They don't do a lot of cooking. They prepare food, but they don't cook. And so our ordinance still requires them to have those. So he's given them a little bit of time to come back and put those probably under the counter grease traps in. So that was informative for them. We did have the issue over the July 4th with a restaurant here in town that did have an overflow. That restaurant had cleaned their grease trap out 2 or 3 months before. We had a little bit of an issue, and evidently there was some leftover that had clogged the outlet, and so it was overflowing. They had a company come in the afternoon of July 4th and clean that grease trap and the lines out very well. We had Scott go in there that week after, and he looked and he said it was done very, very well, and the lines were clean coming in and going out as well as the tank. So he met with management there and made sure that they're going to actually look at that every month, not every other month, and have that service for a while until they can find out exactly the best routine there. So going forward, I think this is definitely going to help. This is something that had been looked at before. Again, as we had talked, our company that comes in to clean all our main sewer lines had told us the last 5 years that we had a large increase in grease in our lines. So I think this is a good thing, and appreciate Scott going around. He's done a really good job. He takes pictures of every location. He had multiple pictures of every location. That way, when he goes back, he knows exactly what he's looking at and where the grease traps are located. So anyway, just wanted to give an update on that. Any questions?
What about the biofuel grease tanks? He addresses that issue too, right?
Yes. So we did have the ordinance that requires each restaurants to secure their biofuel or their recycled fuel canisters to the ground. So the best way to do that was we come up with a memo and gave him a stack of those. So every inspection he goes out, he does pass those memos out and lets people know that they need to secure those. A number of restaurants already have secured them. Some haven't, but we're giving a little bit of time before we start going, restaurant to restaurant and inspecting those. So I think we're headed in the right direction with the whole process.
Any questions of Josh? Now, we're at the end of the agenda. Therefore, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second? All in favor, we're adjourned. Thank you very much.